Hey everybody, what's going on? This is at MNDFCK Mindfuck, the podcast, the broadcast. This is another one of our special editions. We've been doing a couple of these as of late. Myself and Domina Vantana, my co-host. Mindfuck is a podcast and a broadcast. It's basically about all of us attempting to live our best and most sustainable, consensual lives in the midst of some rather difficult situations and errors that we're dealing with right now. So ultimately, I want to hop right into it. We're talking today about the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, the 6-part documentary that was available recently on the Lifetime Network. It was produced by Dream Hampton, who is a legendary journalist. I want to give people a lot of definitions and understanding as to why this documentary occurred and why it's so important. Dream Hampton is the first female editor of the Source magazine. She was the editor-in-chief of Rap Pages. She's written for Vibe, The Village Voice, and Spin, plus more. And she was one of the authors and editors of Jay-Z's Decoded book, where he went through a lot of his lyrics and words. So the thing with her is that ultimately she's one of these people that, in the annals of hip hop culture, is an icon, an unassailable, untouchable icon of great renown and great importance. So when she decides she wants to, discuss the nature of the situations involving R. Kelly, his 30 years of accused sexual impropriety with young girls, his accused sexual impropriety with older women as well. It's important because when you have other people in the space, in the conversational space. Let me put on my glasses, actually. I've been working really hard today, so I apologize. But we have other people in that space who speak in regards to this. It's seen through one eye, I always feel. I feel like if it's a male eye, then there's the possibility that there's going to be some kind of apologies made for R. Kelly's behavior. There's going to be some level of hand-wringing and haranguing in regards to, well, that bitch said this, and that chick said that, and F her, and this, and this, and this. But instead, when it comes to Dream Hampton, somebody who, she's one of the first people that really gave the Notorious B.I.G. any sort of run. She's, literally the one person in all of hip-hop and R&B culture that I would look at. Her time she came up is in the 90s. So I do a thing called the R&B Club at the R&B Club DC on all social media, where we talk about 90s R&B. And 90s R&B is one of those iconic eras that people discuss with, great love and passion in their hearts. But it's also a time where a lot of these songs are about sexual impropriety and just gross misbehavior by men. And when you have a woman who was renowned and respected during an era where that was a thing, speaking and talking about R. Kelly, that's significant. So I felt initially when I realized that she was the executive producer on the project that it was going to be something really special. And it dovetails really nicely when you watch all 6 episodes with a couple of things that I've said and I've written in the past about hip hop culture and the Me Too movement, because you have the founder of Me Too and you have the founder of Mute R. Kelly are both speak significantly in his documentaries. And last year I wrote a piece when the Harvey Weinstein thing occurred, and when the outing of Russell Simmons and his Me Too situation came to light. I wrote a piece called When Hip Hop Meets Me Too and Every Rap Personality is Guilty. I wrote it for Medium. And here's a little snippet. And it kind of gives you a sense of where I'm at when it comes to regarding R. Kelly and why, he was able to survive for so long. The progenitors of hip-hop culture were indeed individuals who are gifted at crafting earworming polyrhythms and unique turns of phrase. But given when and where they were born, they were also hyper-exposed to domestic violence, mass incarceration, drug abuse, prostitution, mental illness, socioeconomic depression, and are inspired by the mainstream media of that era, fetishizing gangland culture and popularizing the pimp and hoe lifestyle. For 50 years, hip-hop as a culture, rap as a music, and its creative communities have persisted and universally expanded, bearing these flaws as dominant truths. Because of this, the fear factor that should be associated with Me Too and hip-hop crossing each other is obvious. When you look at somebody like R. Kelly has 30 years of experience in the music industry. And when you look at the documentary itself, they speak about the fact when he was a teenager, he was picked on a lot by his family. He was illiterate, still largely illiterate now as a grown man. And he went from that in a 5-year gap to being a label signed, pop starring, crossover potential having R&B performer. I don't know about you, but if for me, if I went from, and I was picked on as a child, and I was lambasted for numerous reasons. If I went from that status at say 12 or 13 to 18, having millions of dollars and millions of opportunities and millions of young women who loved my music at my beck and call, and I was aggrieved and possibly in a placing myself in a negative light, the ability to be able to completely change my stars, for lack of a better term. I use that term from Heath Ledger in A Knight's Tale a lot. It's changing your stars, becoming more than you ever imagined. In a case like that, like those are things where that happens to people. And anything that happens after that happens to you, it's entirely plausible. I feel like, you think about people who are put in these situations, like an R. Kelly, and they're ill-equipped, extraordinarily ill-equipped to handle the terror of the situation in which they have been placed. When it comes to R. Kelly as well, that's not to cape for him or to say he's not guilty and he shouldn't be demonized or pilloried, but I say that in this case you have to understand the person prior to the situation. If you understand somewhat of the person, then the notion of the nature of their behavior makes all the sense in the world. And if you have that creative construct upon which to base their behaviors, then it's an easier space in which to have that conversation. So when it comes to R. Kelly as well, why people love him, he's one of the most dominant musical performers of any musical era. I did some math here and did some research before I came on this live broadcast. And R. Kelly, for other artists, has produced on 7 top 10 albums and 13 top 10 singles in 30 years. As well, for himself, he has had 5 top 10 albums. He has had so let me get these numbers straight again. So for other artists, he's had 7 top 10 albums, 13 top 10 singles. And actually, no. For other artists, he's had 5 top 10 albums and 38 top 10 singles. For himself, he's had 7 top 10 albums and 13 top 10 singles. So he's an incredible superstar. His numbers put him in line with people like Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson and Smokey Robinson. And these are artists that we all look at and go, they are gigantic titans of industry who have written songs and created songs that stand the test of time. One of the songs that he talked about in the documentary is You Are Not Alone, which was written in 1996 for Michael Jackson. And earned him a Grammy nomination. And for fans of Michael Jackson, it's in the canonical conversation of the great Michael Jackson ballads. And it's written by R. Kelly. And this is an R. Kelly who is a demonizable figure. But he also has indescribable pop songs that are indescribable in the sense that the kind of impact that they had upon popular culture cannot be simply defined. So even deeper, if you look at an artist like a Fat Joe, for instance, in the midst of the early 2000s when he had his crossover stardom, one of the keys to his crossover stardom was working on a song called We Clubbin' with R. Kelly. And R. Kelly's on the song. He's one of the producers. And it aided an artist who was a very boxed in performer to have a level of crossover acclaim that he likely would have never seen. So R. Kelly is super important to the history of popular music. So still, we've had numerous stars who have had outstanding careers. For instance, Michael Jackson, who at the time of his death was oftentimes considered persona non grata for child molestation situations. He had 16 top 10 albums, 10 number 1 albums, 50 top 10 singles, and 16 number 1 singles in his career. He and that's 35 years. That's from 1982 until the current day. And he's a guy who had the same kind of situation. But again, his songs stand the test of time. So when it comes uniquely to R. Kelly, I wanted to bring up something. There's two things mainly that really trouble his situation. And they trouble his situation in a way that is unique unto him and Joker in Batman level criminal brilliance. And if you're considered to be a demonizable figure in mainstream society, the kind of things you would do in order to remove your name from criticism. I say that one thing with R. Kelly that's important to the conversation is his alpha male mandingo capitalistic urge. There's something about being an alpha male in any situation. I was having a conversation yesterday where someone wanted to compare R. Kelly to Prince. Prince, another person who has questionable sexual mores, and his and the rumored sexual behaviors in which he's engaged are commonplace in conversation. But there's a thing where he released Controversy in 1982. He took himself out of this alpha male, very Americanized notion of mandingo capitalism, where he, when he says, am I black or white? Am I straight or gay? That's one of those moments where immediately you are outside of the alpha male conversation because you have made yourself in the notion of grandiose American notions of masculinity. You've made yourself a beta male in many ways. Because especially in 1982, the nature of people's views towards homosexuality versus heterosexuality when it came to crossover, mainstream, male, African-American, popular musical superstars. There's a certain lane that you're just not in when you ask the question, do you think I'm gay? If you say yes, I might be. That takes you out of a whole conversation. R. Kelly has never done that. In fact, he may be one of the most alpha male, masculine, strong, positive, non-demonizable in any sort of homosexual conversation sort of performer we've ever had. And that has aided him greatly because for his female population, when R. Kelly is bumping and grinding, as his 1992 song says from the album 12 Play, in 1996 rather, when he says, there's nothing wrong with no bump and grind, he's talking about making love to a woman. And when you're tall and handsome and you present yourself in a certain way, then you take yourself out of a lot of concerns. As well, there's this super religious Jesus meets Mary Magdalene, simultaneously committing sin and dying on the cross of popular culture at every single turn that R. Kelly is a genius at doing. It's mentioned in the documentary numerous occasions. The thing that he does is he's able to, in the case of he marries Aaliyah at 16 years of age. He has a harem of women, of numerous women, for the last 20 years. But at the same time, he's able to release these songs that are bathed and swaddled and cultivated within this hyper religiosity that in the African American community, namely, is unassailable. The second that you bring Jesus into the room, you cannot assail this man because of the way in which he brings Jesus into the room, the way in which he brings that Mary Magdalene essence into the room, that New Testament spirituality that is highlighted in his career adds a certain unassailable something to his legacy and to the fact that when you believe him to be some sort of pedophile or some sort of pimp or some sort of occultist leader of a group of sexually maltreated women, that is frustrating because it frustrates your ability to find guilt in his behavior. It's one of those things. So even deeper when it comes to how R. Kelly's been able to survive. When you look at those numbers, like I said, he's created 7 top 10 albums and 13 top 10 singles for himself, and 5 top 10 albums and 38 top 10 singles for other artists. Those are global numbers. That's for Epic Records. That's billions of dollars. So there's artists in the music industry that are stars in the industry. And there are artists in the music industry that sustain music as an industry. So, point in case, say a star like Drake. Drake releases songs numerous times, and they are successful. And Drake is able to be a star that is a star within the industry of music. So R. Kelly, by comparison, because he is a singer, songwriter, and producer, touches every single part of not just his music, but the music for other artists. So there's probably upwards of 100 artists in the last 30 years who have experienced some level of stardom. And that when you trickle up economics, who knew, to A&Rs and label execs and engineers and label heads and wives of label heads and sons and daughters of label heads and music fans who like to go to concerts and concert promoters. R. Kelly is a money-earning franchise player. So, to use an NBA term, he gets the franchise player tag. He absolutely gets the franchise player tag. He is a franchise superstar of an R&B performer, of a music industry denizen. He is a key piece to how Epic Records and then at large the music industry, Live Nation members promoting a tour, can go, hey, we need to make $5 million tomorrow. Robert Kelly, we know that you've touched teenage girls. We know that you have a harem of women. We know all these things are more than likely true. You released a song in 1996 that says, I like the crotch on you. That's a real song. I like the crotch on you, in which he states that 16 and under and 18 and over women are women that he enjoys the company of in his life. Once again, those are in the lyrics of the song. You can look them up at genius.com. I'll add them in the show notes here. Women that are 16 and under and 18 and over are his preferred sexual company. That's right there in the lyrics. Again, that super religiosity, that Jesus meets Mary Magdalene at the same time. Like, I could be a whore in the streets, but also on the same album, I'm going to release these songs about sex and love and childbearing that elevate these things to a level of importance that is hyper religious in nature. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to consider. There's a lot to think about. I mean, R. Kelly is now a demonized figure entirely. John Legend, Tom Joyner, his ex-wife, numerous of the young ladies who were in cults that were headed by R. Kelly, numerous women in which he had with whom he had affairs, all across the board, or all implicate him as being a terrible figure. Chance the Rapper. Chance is most notably problematic because he says, and I quote, that he did not believe the allegations of African-American women against R. Kelly. Problematic. A lot of this culture that, again, is based within domestic violence, mass incarceration, drug abuse, prostitution, mental illness, socioeconomic depression, and gangland culture, pimp and hoe lifestyle included, values women as chattel, to be bought and sold on street corners. These are women that if you watch these blaxploitation films, as I do, I'm a noted fan of African-American 70s cinema, we don't love them hoes, like Snoop Dogg says. We don't. We don't trust them. We don't believe in them. They are liars. They're trying to keep money away from their pimps. They are bad, bad women. And if you extrapolate it, into a deeper conversation regarding R. Kelly and his situation, if all he is a C-grade imitation of Max Julian in the Mac, which he is, by the way, a C-grade imitation of Max Julian in the Mac. So watch the Mac and watch Max Julian in the Mac, and you will see Robert Kelly on screen. You will see, I feel like he watched it maybe as a child and said, there it is. Bam, that's who I want to be. Shazam, in the streets. Big pimpin', R. Kelly. So, Shazam. But I feel like if that's the case, then his belief and his maladjusted notion of women, and given that so much of popular culture right now is hip-hop driven, even benignly so, the 10 women who were, based, that whole entire special are based around, are never to be believed. And that's frustrating. But how do we change that? I think that in the deeper point, before I get off this cast real quick, is to say that we almost have to bury hip hop in the ground. Large scale. It's hurt a lot of black lives. It's hurt a lot of black women. It's killed Biggie and Tupac. It's a bad thing. It's a great thing because it's also allowed for people like Nas to have partnerships with Harvard University and to, create, careers for numerous young African Americans, in the future. It's done wonderful things for, for other artists. It's done wonderful things for, every young white producer of EDM that I know. If you watch the Skrillex documentary, not Skrillex, but watch the Avicii documentary that's currently on Netflix, Ash Pirani, his manager, is listening to Rick Ross when they talk about selling levels. And when you see Avicii walking around in a Tupac shirt, it says everything. All eyes on me. The culture is ever present within white male culture. But at the same time, it's also done horrible things, like allow for a grown-ass man to imprison women inside of a home and commit deviant sexual acts with them. And we have to call that out, and we have to call it into it. So if there's any one thing that I want to see moving forward, past surviving R. Kelly, shout out to Dreamhampton, and Brandon Felton's wife, who had a part to do with that as well. Shout out to Brandon for letting me know this was happening and giving me the heads up to, watch it and to be aware that it was going on. Thank you. You provided an invaluable service with these 6 hours of television that I watched, and many of us watched. Hopefully, moving forward again, I don't know if this can work because, again, hip-hop is so prevalent right now. It's the most dominant form of pop culture in the world. But we got to move past it. We got to think of another way. I told someone on Facebook, facebook.com/Marcus K. Dowling. Follow me. Check me out. Another cheap plug. I'm so sorry. In regards to this, you want to become maybe a fan of women-centered American democracy. There's 100 women in Congress in this term. Possibly one of them will be running for president in 2020 or 2024. Support these women. They're influenced by the culture because all of us are. Even more so, they're smart. And if we're to move past this, it's going to be a top-down situation where you're going to have a strong African-American-led cause led by women, maybe even brown women. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, so much of hip-hop culture is based within brown people's culture. So either way, maybe we get to that point and we look at these women and we look at them as the harbingers of the future. So that could be where we're at. For more thoughts like this, tune in tomorrow live from the Line Hotel in Washington, D.C. at Full Service Radio Studio, bit.ly/MNDFCK, all in caps, capital P, ODCST, podcast in lowercase, and take a listen to myself and Domina Fontana, along with Cindy Clay, the executive director of Helping Individual Prostitutes Survive. That's going to be a conversation I think that everybody needs to take a listen to. You can find us, the podcast, Mindfuck Podcast, MNDFCK Podcast, at MNDFCK Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're out there. We're talking every day, trying to, make the world a better place day by day, step by step. I would say brick by brick, but, that's politically triggering language these days. Even further, you can check us out on, for listening purposes, on Anchor, on iTunes, on Spotify, on SoundCloud, Stitcher, everywhere across your streaming and downloadable dial. Especially if you're on iTunes, leave us a positive feedback. Leave us a subscription. That would be great. Also, keep an eye and ear out for myself at Marcus with the C.K. Dowling, Dowling, across all social media. My co-host, Domina Vantana, at Domina Vantana, DOMINA VONTANA on all social media. She's going to be on in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes with her take on surviving R. Kelly. So you're going to get a Midwestern preacher's daughter, farmer's daughter from out there in the Midwest doing the same thing. And she has a lot to say about this as well. So I hope that everybody has found this thoughtful, and hopefully this has provided some feedback in regards to why this man has been allowed to excel and succeed in the face of his horrible and egregious crime-ridden past, present, and unfortunately probably likely future. Again, have a great day. Have a better tomorrow. Please stay tuned.